In the first video, we explained about the national Lead K efforts and how we already have similar laws here in Minnesota since 2007. In this video, we will continue to explain the laws we have for language acquisition and kindergarten readiness for Minnesota children who are deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing. Since 2007, Minnesota's children and their families have benefited from the public policy set in place by our legislators, thanks to the efforts of community advocates, parents, and MNCDHH board members. The laws that were passed require 1. An advisory committee with deaf, hard of hearing, and parent representation on the board. 2. Each child's progress is measured using evidence-based assessments to track their progress on meeting benchmarks, including language acquisition. 3. The Minnesota Department of Education and the Minnesota Department of Health must report the data to parents and a summary information to the state. 4. Deaf mentors to serve as role models and provide ASL and deaf culture information in the home. 5. A mandate of universal newborn hearing screening. And 6. Loaner bank for hearing aids. There are many laws in Minnesota for language acquisition and reporting. We will briefly explain each law. We also want to clarify that while we successfully advocate for these laws and we continue to track the results, other state agencies or organizations are responsible for the implementation to do the day-to-day work. But first, Minnesota adopted the Universal Newborn Hearing Screening Mandate in 2007. The earlier a baby is identified to have a hearing loss, the sooner the family can work to ensure language acquisition and receive services. The legislation is essential because it requires hearing loss screening by 1 month, confirmation of hearing loss by 3 months, and beginning intervention services by 6 months. This is called the 136 goals. Since the implementation of the EHDI-EDI mandate in July 2007, screening for hearing loss in newborns has gone from 75% of newborns were screened to 99% of newborns were screened. The Minnesota Department of Health is responsible for the program. You may visit their website. Parent-to-parent support. This is led by experienced parents of children who are deaf, deafblind, or hard of hearing for new parents and their families. Parent-to-parent support provides resources and support networks about parenting, attachment, resources, and schooling through a national curriculum without bias. This gives families the information they need to make decisions for their family. The program is run by the Minnesota Hands and Voices and is called Parent Guides. Deaf mentors. After the 2007 legislative session, funding for deaf mentors was written into session law to provide in-home American Sign Language and deaf culture instruction. The goal is to increase communication with the family and educate parents on the social and emotional development of their child. The Minnesota Department of Human Services received funding for the program beginning July 1st, 2007, and contracts with LifeTrack Resources for the services. In 2013, Deaf mentors were added in statute and funds dedicated to their program through the newborn blood spot fee for heritable conditions. Deaf and hard of hearing role models. In 2016, LifeTrack Resources began to provide deaf and hard of hearing role models in addition to Deaf Mentor Family Program. This program assigns successful deaf role models up to families and their children to assure parents of their child's many gifts and great potential. Seeing a successful role model who is deaf or hard of hearing, like them, increases the child's self-esteem and positive social skills. The funding is provided by the Minnesota Department of Health. Hearing Aid Loan or Bank Program. The Minnesota Department of Health has a contract with the University of Minnesota to run the Hearing Instrument Loaner Program, which loans hearing aids to families who have a child with a hearing loss immediately upon request. The family uses the loaned hearing aids until the family figures out a way to finance a pair of hearing aids themselves. The 2007 to present, every family who has requested to borrow hearing aids through this program has received it. The funding is provided by the Minnesota Department of Health. In our next video, we will continue to explain the language acquisition tracking laws here in Minnesota.